most of them listen to these really obscure news sources. Some woman was like, I listen to Health Freedom News and I get my news from my Facebook mom group that I'm a member of. And it's like, as a general rule, the more obscure the news outlet that the person listened to, the more insane their opinions were. And that sucks, man, because there was a time when independent media, new media, was like the beacon of hope for the future of like, oh, look, we can break through mainstream media BS and tell everybody the truth. But now, independent news and new media, they have their own litany of problems. Different problems for mainstream media, but it's a litany of problems. You have terminal contrarians and narrative humpers and conspiracy theorists galore, and these people are just getting a steady diet of absolute lunacy, and then they have these crazy opinions and think like, well, what do you mean? No, this is exactly what it is. Pandemic, of course. So, really terrifying stuff, and I have to say this focus group bodes well for Trump.
Wow. Kyle Kulinski just exposed his own wife and her fraud. I say this as a big fan of Breaking Points. I think they're one of the best in the business. And I say that with confidence, right? That being said, how could Crystal be a fraud? And she is one of the, I guess, founders of Breaking Points. Well, she does great work. I have issues with some of her takes, of course, and it's a shame that you have to say that. I mean, the idea that I would be, 100%, in agreement with anyone is ridiculous. But this is the world we live in, so I have to say that I have my critiques of her content. But my biggest critique is what I call her fraud. The fraud of Breaking Point. So it's not just about Crystal. It's the show. One of the biggest themes of the show is a fraud. What is their biggest thing they talk about on the show? They want to create a new mainstream, right? Their whole war against the mainstream media, the evil mainstream media, the boogeyman that they use to maximize the profits, which is a shame. I mean, unfortunately, perhaps, it is what it is in terms of the business that they're in. They are somewhat slaves to the algorithm. They need some kind of an angle, and perhaps that's the angle that they chose. But regardless of the reason that they're doing it, it is fraudulent to suggest that mainstream media is some big bad boogeyman, because they're not. The worst media in this country is independent media. Independent media is the most toxic, most dishonest, most biased, most partisan BS propaganda we have. They make mainstream media look like good journalism. And I say that as a person who has serious critiques of mainstream media. But the difference between me and Crystal and Kyle usually is my issue is not, it's just like with the class warfare, right? And even this partisanship of, Republican versus Democrat and all that kind of stuff. I'm not about the Republican versus Democrat. I'm anti-corruption, right? That's, my issue is corruption. I don't care whether it's blue or red, right? I look at corrupt people like Pelosi and Biden, right? And the many in the Democratic Party. I look at them the same way I look at Republicans in terms of their corruption. Not to get religious on you, but it's just the concept of coming from a very religious family. When they talk about sin, I believe there's a concept that all sin is the same in the eyes of God, right? So whether you're a murderer or you're a shoplifter, you're a sinner, right? So I take a little bit of a religious stance when it comes to these things. I just see corruption. Yes, I recognize more corruption in the Republican Party versus Democratic Party, but I don't care. It's not a competition, right? And then people think about, class warfare. Kyle Kulinski is part of this class warfare who is hurting the middle class, right? Now he's trying to redefine the middle class as the middle class are actually working class, right? All these little games to justify their basically abandoning of middle class. The minute that you have a little bit of money, that's it. You're dirt, right? The focus on the poor and the homeless, right? You are a property owner and you're renting apartments, for example. You're evil, you're satanic, right? So it'll help the poor. But as soon as the poor lift their head up a little bit, all of a sudden, oh, you're good enough. Look at these people. They don't even have a place to live. Why are we going to worry about you? Right? So they do the equivalent with media, right? Oh, it's corporate media. Corporate media is controlled, and corporate media this and corporate interests and da 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 da. It's not about that they're corporate media. That's not the issue. The issue is partisan media. Doesn't matter whether you're corporate or independent. Partisan media is toxic, right? Partisan media is folks who are making profit, maximizing profit, by focusing on demonizing one side while championing another side, right? MSNBC, pro DNC, anti GOP, right? Brian Tyler Cohen, ironically now he's on MSNBC, pro DNC, anti GOP. He constantly attacks the GOP while championing the DNC or the Democratic Party, right? MSNBC, ironically, is far more objective compared to Brian Tyler Cohen. I know some of you brain rot, people get so tunnel vision. Like the idea of MSNBC being more objective, they don't even comprehend the more objective, right? Just hearing the word objective next to MSNBC, your brain just shuts down. I'm saying more objective. In the same vein as pointing out a gang member who has murdered people, pointing out that he's factually less violent than a serial killer. Or you could even go as far as to say he's more, I don't know if you want to say he's more peaceful. I mean, he's not peaceful. I'm not saying he's peaceful, but more peaceful, right? Because one is more violent because this serial killer killed 50 people. Meanwhile, the gangster only killed 3. So, which would be more peaceful than the other? Certainly the gangster that only killed 3. The gangster's not peaceful, but he's more so. Peaceful over here, gangster's here, serial killer's way out there, right? The gangster's way closer to peace relative to the serial killer. MSNBC compared to Brian Tyler Cohen is far more objective. They are the ones who exposed, in my eyes, Joe Biden as far as what it looks like he did to Tara Reid. Brian Tyler Cohen would never, ever dare to suggest that Joe Biden did anything wrong to that level. No way. Brian Tyler Cohen is far more dishonest, far more partisan than MSNBC, and MSNBC is extremely partisan. CNN, not as partisan as MSNBC, but certainly very partisan. Spend certainly more time focusing on attacking the Republican Party than the Democratic Party, right? But compare CNN to something like an Alex Jones, a Steven Crowder, or Ben Shapiro, Newsmax. On the internet, you have random people who are accountable to no one, in their basements, able to say whatever it is that drives views. No one can fire them. No one can call them into their office and say, hey, you went too far. As long as it gets clicks and views, they're good to go. This is very dangerous and leads to very, very toxic content, which is far worse than mainstream media. And the other part of the fraud is, these are the same people on Breaking Points who tell us how this is legacy media. They're dying. No one's watching them anymore, right? You are telling us that these guys are dinosaurs. No one's watching them. That new media is booming and smashing them. But yet we're supposed to focus on the mainstream media as they're the problem? The days of mainstream media being the problem are long gone, for the very same reason that Breaking Points has pointed out, that they're legacy media and they're dying and they're not getting views. You have individuals like Steven Crowder that can get tens of thousands of people to watch him live. You think CNN can do that? MSNBC could do that? Who's more dangerous? Who's more partisan? Who's more toxic? Steven Crowder, funded by billionaires, able to live stream to tens of thousands of people, or CNN that's legacy and nobody's watching them? Stop the bullshit. Stop playing games pretending as if mainstream media is the issue. The issue is greed. The issue is for-profit media. Why is mainstream media as bad as they are? Because they're focused on profits. What the hell do you think independent media folks are focused on? What do you think Jimmy Dore is focused on? Kim Iverson, Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, Brian Tyler Cohen, the Young Turks. What do you think all these independent media folks are focused on? Profits. What will grow their channel the most? What will get them the most subscribers? What will get them the most views? What will get them the most fame? And this is the very thing that is an issue with corporate media. Obviously, corporate media has other issues as well in terms of their corporate allegiance. But those same corporations are also advertising on independent media channels via AdSense. As an independent journalist who is making money on YouTube, you're incentivized to not upset the corporations. You want your content to be advertiser friendly. Just like mainstream media doesn't want to say certain things because certain companies are advertising on their networks, like CNN doesn't want to say things to call out people that are giving them money. Independent media, unless you're strictly Patreon, right? You also want to make sure that your content is friendly for advertisers. And therefore, you have similar conflicts of interest. But Crystal doesn't want to talk about this. Kyle usually doesn't want to talk about this because he is part of this fraud who's been talking about mainstream media, oh, the mainstream media, oh, the establishment. Hardly ever do you hear them focusing on what's happening today. Like, these guys are in the past. You're talking about legacy media. Old school media is the problem. This is 2023. CNN and MSNBC are the past. You've said it yourself. So stop pretending like that's the issue. For-profit media is the issue. If you could take away the profit incentive from CNN, they would be far better than they are now. Same goes for independent media. Everyone who's making media, news media, for the purpose of generating profit is subject to conflicts of interest which lead them to being very, very dishonest and manipulative and therefore toxic because the money is in being very partisan and tribal and pandering to your audience. The anti-mainstream media argument is a fraud, it's a lie, it's a manipulation. This is 2023. Independent media is the worst form of media we have in this country. It's also where you can find some of the best. But most of independent media is toxic trash. Because everyone who's in independent media, again, they're going to fall into the same issue. There's a low barrier to entry. Anybody can just start up a YouTube channel. So there's a lot of competition. How do you compete? By being dishonest and partisan and pandering to your audience. Oh, the Republicans are racist, Republicans are racist, Republicans are racist, Republicans are racist. Right? Oh, the Democrats are socialists, destroying this country. Open borders, open borders. Oh, CRT, CRT. That's how you make money. And at least corporate media, they have structure. They've been doing this for a while. They have a lot of money and resources, right? When you have individuals on their own struggling in the beginning to pay their rent and keep a roof over their head, not knowing if they'll survive or how long they'll be successful, they can get very desperate and aggressive. I gotta keep growing my channel. Oh, my views are down. Oh, I gotta do more of this. Oh, what's happening, right? You've been doing it for 5 years. If your channel collapses, what will happen? How will you pay your bills? Your resume will be YouTuber for the last 3 years. That puts people's back against the walls and can make them be very, very desperate, very, very dishonest. What would you not do to survive? Knowing you're in a very delicate business, any minute now your channel could just get deleted, or people just don't want to listen to you anymore. Independent media is the biggest problem today. They're far more dishonest, far more partisan, far more biased. And there's no accountability, almost no accountability whatsoever. Who's going to fire Tim Pool? Who's going to fire Brian Tyler Cohen? Think about a mainstream media. You have a guy who jerks off on a live stream, and they get rid of him, and then he's back. Mainstream media. You could do that and get right back. You could do the stuff we've seen many of the guys in mainstream media do and not get fired. Eventually they do, but they could go a long time without getting fired. Who's going to fire Tim Pool? Who's going to fire Brian Tyler Cohen? Who's going to fire the people on the Young Turks, the leaders? It's time that these people be honest about the reality and stop with this anti-mainstream media garbage. There's a lot of garbage in mainstream media, but independent media, far worse. But of course, it's bad for business for you to be honest about the very business that you're in, even though you're representative of the way I feel it should be done. Not perfect, but Breaking Points, I think, is a good model for the way independent media should be done. But even with that being the case, they still feel the need to play this game of mainstream media. This is Debate Me Channel. Debate me in the comment section below. Click on the like button, subscribe, smash that bell. Be well. Somebody had to say it because nobody else will. Because they're all worried about their bottom line and they're trying to run a business. I ain't trying to run a business. I'm trying to tell you the truth. Not interested in fame. The idea of doing YouTube for a living is scary as hell to me. I can't imagine the way I make a living could just be disappeared in one night. YouTube deletes my channel and I can't even talk to them. There's no explanation. And I can't imagine me chasing an algorithm, letting software tell me what to talk about and when to talk about it, all the while pretending that that's not the case. You don't think all these guys look at their metrics and see which videos are doing better than others and make decisions accordingly? Which means they're letting software tell them what to do and how to do it and how to run their channels. Which means you're not really watching them. You're watching AI. Think about it.